One of the things that came out of our trip through Kentucky, Tennessee, visiting the Bourbon Trail was a lot of ideas, but kind of the biggest thing that we noticed was these historic distilleries all worked with a very specific mash bill, something that they've had for years and years and years. That's their perfect mash bill. And as a startup, that's not something we could really do or have kind of dialed in when we started. So we took a different approach and kind of borrowed a production method that's synonymous with Canadian whiskey, in that we're going to not have a set mash bill, and we're going to just do everything individually. That means we mash, ferment, distill, and barrel age all of the grains individually. We're essentially just making blending components that will eventually become our bourbon, not coming up with a set mash bill to start with and hoping that's going to be the best recipe that we ever could have made. One of the benefits we saw of just having blending components versus set mash bills, we can be very nimble in our flavor profiles and catering to specific customer needs that we like. If there's a certain person that likes a really high rye mash bill, we can make a high rye bourbon, high wheat, which is what we're going to come out with, or incorporating different proportions of malts, blends of anything like that. It's really up to us. And we just have lots of different barrels that we can work with and blend, and completely different flavor profiles. And as things age and flavor profiles change during the maturation process, we can blend that way too, to kind of highlight specific flavor profiles that we're going to like at certain time periods and blend them with other ones there. So it's something that kind of just out of necessity of not having a set mash bill, it turned into something that we're really excited about, and gives us a lot of different unique opportunities down the road. So how that works with not having a mash bill is, where we're standing here is our beginning of production. So this is our mashing area. Behind me is our mill. We have a 6-roller mill. We work with some bulk grains. So our barley that comes from Nate's farm, and the corn we have in bulk silos outside. We work with super sacks. So our wheats, ryes that we get custom malted for us, and then also the smaller ones we can dump in our bag here. This gets fed through our mill, crushes it into the consistency of like fine grits, and goes into our grist case there. That's on load cells, so we can determine how many pounds exactly we need for the mash. That'll then get fed into our mash cooker, which is down there. We went with, for myself, coming from a brewing background, I was more comfortable with working with a brewer supplier there. So it's essentially a single vessel brew house that we can heat up and cool down all in one side, in one vessel there. Typical mash for us is 3,500 to 4,000 pounds of grain, and start to finish, it's about 6 to 7 hours mashing, heating up and cooling back down. During the mashing process, we are adding the ground up grains, heating that with water to specific temperature ranges, and that activates the enzymes in the malt that convert that into sugars. Once we've converted all those sugars, we'll then cool it back down and we'll send it into fermentation. There, we pitch pretty cool, 68 to 70 degrees, and that's because it's going to generate heat during fermentation. We get all of our small grains malted that come from Nate's farm. So we use malted wheat, malted rye, and malted barley. In addition to that, we get some of those grains specialty malted. So caramel malts, toasted malts, kiln malts, and even smoked malts is all the different kinds that we work with here. And those are all going to add layers of flavor and complexity to our mash bills and eventually our whiskey down the road. This is an example of our malted wheat right here. So this was grown on Nate's farm. We get this malted here in Minnesota, and it just brings out deeper, creamy notes. And it also activates enzymes that help convert it in the mash itself. So both functional and flavor benefits to having this grain malted. But for us, the biggest decision was based on flavor itself, and that it's going to create deeper flavors in the whiskey that we're trying to make. We use a lot of specialty malted grains as well. So this is caramel wheat, and we use these in a lot smaller percentages. Similar again to brewing, in that you're trying to create layers of flavor and kind of like almost like a crescendo of darker flavors that accentuate the whiskey. So like the caramel malted wheat, caramel malted rye, those are going to add toffee, some subtle roast notes to it. just make a more complex spirit overall. And that's, again, leaning on coming from a brewing background and wanting to incorporate that into the whiskeys that we make.